In 1976, there were barely 100 computers with a population of 700 million, yet six daring engineers from DCM had the conviction to bet on the India computer market. What gave you the conviction at that point?
Well, you actually said it. 100 computers, large market. And so we saw the opportunity very clearly.
We're at a very interesting point in the world history, right? There's so much geopolitical tension. Trump on a random day can just announce that, there are tariffs on India. Today he was talking about how Apple shouldn't manufacture and do assembly in India. What do you think in India's scenario today? What should we do to excel in the next 5 to 10 years so that we are not dependent on other economies?
See, our biggest challenge is that for too long we have become a country of traders. We don't do any designs and we don't make products.
Yeah, India barely spends on R&D. Korea, China spend so much.
We are 0.2% and 0.3%. Reliance spends 0.1% on R&D. So this needs to change.
What are some of the red flags that you've seen in the companies that didn't work out?
Very poor corporate governance, no interest in finance and no sales leadership. These are three things that typically happen in companies. After this war, one thing is very clear, that we didn't fight Pak, we fought China. Just like Pak was behind the terrorists, behind Pak was China. It has now come to our very clearly in our minds that we should be beware of China. So what are we doing today? All the chips that are coming into different products in the country are all Chinese chips.
And coming back to your HCL journey, because we spoke about Indian founders having the ambition to go global, you took HCL global in its 4th year by moving operations to Singapore and scaling up there. What advice do you have for founders who have global ambitions but might not be able to know where to start?
You see, it depends.
Hello and welcome everyone to the India Opportunity Show. My guest today is Mr. Ajay Chaudhary, who is not only the co-founder of HCL, but also went on to become the chair of National Quantum Mission of India and also authored a book called Just Aspire. He has been one of the earliest champions of India's transformation into a product-led nation. As a founder, angel investor, and also a public policy maker now, he has contributed so much to India's economic and financial ecosystem. Today, HCL not only stands as a business success, but also a great success story of grit, vision, and what Indian founders can achieve. In this conversation, we go far beyond just company building. We explore what it takes to build markets from scratch, how to transition from scarcity to scale, and where India's next big opportunity lies. Hope you enjoy watching. Hello, Mr. Chaudhary. Welcome to the India Opportunity Show. Such a privilege to have you on the show with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting us in your beautiful office, in your beautiful home.
Thank you.
In 1976, there were barely 100 computers with a population of 700 million. Yet, six daring engineers from DCM had the conviction to bet on the India computer market. What gave you the conviction at that point?
Well, you actually said it. 100 computers, large market. And so we saw the opportunity very clearly. And the second reason was that inside DCM, they're also working on a computer. Originally, we had started as a calculator company, and then we had started working on a design of a computer. And at that time, the microprocessor was just making its appearance. So we said, all computers in India that are there today are very old-fashioned. Some of them, like IBM, used to bring second-hand products and would refurbish and sell. So we said this needs to change. And that's how we saw that great opportunity. But of course, that time nobody knew something called a startup.
Yeah.
And that's how we started at that stage.
Yep.
It was just 1.86 lakhs.
Wow. Yeah, because in today's day and age, there are millions thrown at startups before they hit product market fit.
Right.
But there's something to be said about the scarcity mindset, right, that fuels innovation.
Yes.
And we were just talking about startups and their journeys. What do you think you got right at that early stage that you were able to do it without external capital?
You see, we understood one of the strengths that we came with is that we had a very strong sales, marketing, and finance background. Because my two other co-founders were deeply involved in the finance part of it. One of them was very deeply tech, and the rest of us were very sales focused.
Right.
And once you have this combination of sales, finance, and tech, it makes for the right combination,
Absolutely.
which is not what most startups have
Yeah.
the benefit of. And therefore, what we did initially was that those days to even start a computer company, you needed a license.
Yeah.
And we went around as a young team to the government offices, and all of them threw us away. They said, "We don't know you. You're so small. We can't give you a license to make." So we were thinking, what should we do in the meantime? So we decided to set up a little marketing company, and we called it Microcom. And we started to pick up calculators from companies like Televista and started marketing them. The whole idea of that was to create some cash flow.
Hmm.
So we actually experimented with a concept of negative cash flow then. So what we would do is that we would take a Televista product with 60-day credit and we'll sell it off in 10, 15 days. So we had 45 days extra available. And that way we could, roll our money. Dell talked about it 20 years later, that we are doing a great thing called negative cash flow. We're doing it in 76. And then once we got that started, we started to talk to very people and say, how do we get a license? So we spotted these opportunities that UP government was sitting with a license, not knowing what to do with it. So we approached the UP government, and as luck would have it, there were some great people there who understood that working together with a organization, a company which has actually come out of DCM. DCM was the fifth largest company.
Yeah.
So they appreciated the value of us coming in. And therefore, we actually formed a joint sector company and we called it Hindustan Computers Limited. At that stage, to even get the name Hindustan was very difficult because the name used to be given only to large companies or PSUs.
Right.
But we just fought for it and got it. And that actually changed the course of our company because suddenly when we took off, we were looking much larger than life with the name Hindustan Computers.
Yeah, the name does absolutely make all the difference. And also coming from UP, because I come from UP, I was just telling you I'm a Lucknow girl. So I thought that was so forward looking for the government to take such an initiative at that point. What do you think the government can do today to support startups that are emerging out of India?
The government has done very good work in terms of setting up Startup India, and various state governments have also started doing this. Even UP does that.
Yeah.
But I think there is a gap existing in 2-3 areas. As far as central government is concerned, they actually had this terrible tax that they had, which we worked for 7 years to get removed, angel tax.
Yeah.
But the biggest piece that is still left is employee stock option program.
Yeah.
And that needs to be sorted out by the central government. That state government cannot be.
That's what we wish for every year when the budget
So
comes
we are
around.
still pushing for it. And hopefully someday it will happen. But if you look at state governments, they're putting money behind it. But I think what they need to do is to identify areas, verticals, where they should put money. And they should look at where the market is and then start to put money, technical competency for startups. So give them technical guidance and business guidance.
Yeah.
In a lot of incubators in the country located in even IITs, they give you technical mentoring, but they don't do good business mentoring. And that is a very big missing piece.
Right.
And when I meet startups, the first thing I ask is that, do you know how to sell? And if a CEO doesn't know how to sell, I think he's not going to be successful, she's not going to be successful. And so this is something that a lot of startups don't understand. And the second thing that startups mess up with is finance and accounting. They say, if my product is great, it will sell on its own. तो वो भी नहीं होता. ऊपर से they don't care about finance and accounting. If you ask them, what were your numbers last month? They don't know.
Yeah.
Now that's a disaster. Because if you don't understand finance and accounting, how will you ever be successful?
I think that's why there have been so many corporate governance issues that have emerged out of our ecosystem, unfortunately. But coming back to your initiative about, talking about the verticalization support, there's a lot being done in the India space mission, for example, where, there have been budget and allocation carved out specifically for that. So are you talking on those lines?
Yes.
Mhm.
So I think there are about 10, 12 great verticals where I see tremendous amount of opportunities. And those are the verticals where I feel state governments not only should support startups and create those verticals, they should also set up little cities around each of these verticals. So it could be a space city, it could be a drone city, it could be a two-wheeler city. Those kind of things should be done. And inside that, set up startup village, design village, education, and manufacturing and design. Then you have an integrated piece.
Yeah, that would be the dream ideally. But since you are also heading the National Quantum Mission, what do you think India's future deep tech journey looks like in India realistically? And what do you think we should do in terms of balancing out, aiming for the moonshots in terms of achieving quantum, but then also balancing it with product-led innovation happening in the country?
You see, you literally asked two separate
Yeah.
questions in one. But let me start with quantum mission. Quantum mission is well on its way. And uh, the big difference in this mission from any other mission is that we are very focused on products. So there is a target that is given to researchers to achieve. There is no concept of research for the heck of doing research. Research must be accompanied by product development. So that is very clearly given to them. So you have to do 1,000 qubits for computing. You have to do 2,500 kilometers for communication, etc., etc. So we have targets for each. That's the first part of this mission. The second part of this mission is we are creating more skills. So we've tied up with AICTE, and this year we are starting undergrad program in quantum in 75 universities.
Okay.
And we are giving 1 crore to each university for setting up a lab. So
Hmm.
that they're not just taught in the class, they understand exactly what they can do.
Yeah.
And the third thing that we are doing is involving industry from now. Yeah. And startup program in quantum is the most aggressive startup program ever created in the government. I mean, before I came in, they were talking about, let's give 2 crores to per startup or 3 crores to per startup. I said, look, in a research oriented area, which is
Hmm.
quantum, no, they will not achieve anything in 2 and 5 quarters.
Yeah,
crores.
that's true.
So we decided to give 30 crores per startup. And in special cases, 50 crores.
Wow.
Now, the challenge was, how does government protect its investment?
Hmm.
Because in all other cases, if you see, they will say, okay, give me your house. You put a house, your home as as
Collateral.
collateral.
Yeah.
Those things don't work because how many startups will have that?
Yeah.
So we came up with a very unique concept. We said, if we give you this kind of money, when you go for a next round of funding, you will give the government an option to buy the stock at 30% discount.
Okay. That's a win-win situation.
Yeah, CCPS.
Yeah,
So we
of course.
got them to do a CCPS with us, and they were happy. We have control,
Hmm.
and we have the option to take. And at some stage, if they really do a good exit, all the money that we've spent many times more will come back.
Yeah.
So it's a very unique concept which has never been done in the government. Since I come from private sector, I took a different view.
Yeah, this is like the Indian version of Doge being implemented in India, right? And we really needed that because, in different countries, we see people who've done exceptionally well in different fields go and then join the government and contribute to national service in a big way. And it is people like you who are enabling that in so many
So
different
one of the things that interestingly happened as a result is that we actually led a funding round
Okay.
in a startup. And because of our fund, 2 other funds invested.
Nice.
So we invested 30, they got another 30. So can you imagine
Yeah.
government leading a fund round? It's never happened before.
Yeah. And that would give so much confidence to even the customers of that company.
And
right?
VCs.
Yeah.
Because VCs feel that, oh, if Quantum Mission has approved this project,
Yeah.
the guys must be technically good.
Hmm. Amazing. That's incredible. And what are some of the other initiatives that you want to see happen in India? Because we were just talking about how HCL achieved the semiconductor bit. But I've often heard you say that we don't just need fabs in India, we need to own the full stack innovation.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about that a little bit more.
You see, semiconductors, if you look at the complete value chain, and if you actually take it a little beyond semiconductors to electronics,
Hmm.
semiconductor is in every product that you can think of,
Yeah.
except maybe a pencil. But so semiconductor and software is there everywhere. It's a ubiquitous thing. Now, what is our strength in this country? Our strength is design. For many years, we have created some great, fabulous design people in this country who have VLSI design capability, who have embedded systems capability. So these people are in very large numbers in this country. They actually work for world market, whether with HCL or various software companies or with GCCs like Intel, Nvidia, all of them design their chips in India.
Yeah.
So this capability is available. But what we have started with is fabs,
Hmm.
because fabs take 4 to 5 years to happen.
Yeah.
So the government has rightly invested in fabs, and those will come up in 4 to 5 years. The next area that they need to pay attention to is setting up a R&D lab, which they've already decided to upgrade SCL to an R&D lab. So that is already on the way. They're also working on creating manpower. So many universities have been given EDA tools free, which is the biggest cost for a startup.
Yeah.
So all that has been done. Now the time has come to actually create products out of India. And due to this particular war, and also due to the unipolar situation in the world, I think we need to have what I call uh, technology ownership,
Yeah.
very importantly. So I call it technology sovereignty. और वो हिंदी में उसको आत्मीयता बोलते हैं. तो आत्मनिर्भर से हमें आत्मीयता की तरफ जाना पड़ेगा. Why? Because we are going to be, as we go forward in deep tech, we are going to be under a stress where many countries will stop exports to us. They will deny technology to us. It's happened in atomic energy. It's happened in space. We went and developed everything on our own. So I think it will be good for us if these things happen.
Yeah.
Because in crisis, India works the best.
Yeah.
So this particular war has also proven that it is tech that wins the war.
Yeah.
Okay. And many years ago, I read one of the uh, senators in America. His name was Ben Sasse, and he was the intelligence council senator.
Okay.
And he made this statement some 7-8 years ago. Next wars will be fought with semiconductors.
Mm.
Just imagine.
Yeah.
It is happening.
Yeah.
So all the technology that we used in the last war was all remote technology, where hardware, electronics, semiconductors, and software,
Yeah.
and space technology played a huge role.
Hmm.
This is the first war that we have actually not used GPS. We've used the local NAVIC chip. That is more secure for us. So, this is where the world is going.
Yeah.
And we need to be very much on top of owning technologies. This is where China has scored over the US in the last 50 years. They now own technology which even the US doesn't have. So I think this is where India needs to pay attention. And what is our strength as a country? Our strength is our brain power.
Yeah.
Not just manufacturing. So I think step by step, the government has actually created this whole model of creating electronic volume manufacturing, then semiconductors, and now the next phase is design, where there is a design linked incentive scheme which the government has, but the one that they have currently is not exactly that great, because it just provides about 20 odd crores to a startup.
Yeah.
For a chip development, 20 crores is
Nothing. Yeah.
So what our recommendation to the government is that take that amount to 100 to 200 crores per chip and use the quantum model of CCPS when you give the money. So you're secure.
Yeah.
And also, don't ask the startup to put any money. In the existing scheme, 20 crores, 10 crores startup has to put. Which startup has 10 crores?
Yeah. Unless they raise from angels or, seed
So it's
funds.
very difficult and
Yeah.
therefore it's not been successful. So now they are coming up with a DLI 2.0.
Okay.
And we have been giving many recommendations on what should be done. And I'm sure the government will take that up. And
Yeah.
the Honorable Minister has already announced that we are going to make 25 different chips in India to replace imports. See, the challenge today is that after this war, one thing is very clear, that we didn't fight Pak, we fought China. Just like Pak was behind the terrorists, behind Pak was China. So it has now come to our very clearly in our minds that we should be beware of China.
Yeah.
So what are we doing today? All the chips that are coming into different products in the country are all Chinese chips.
Yeah.
And
Even EV for that matter, like, rare earth metals, they can stop our access at any point.
anytime.
Yeah.
So in drones, Chinese chips.
Yeah.
In EVs, Chinese chips. In electric meters, Chinese chips. In CCTVs, Chinese chips.
Yeah.
Can
Any
you
kind of
imagine?
precision components or anything, everything's come.
They have trapdoors in the chips where they can take the data back.
Yeah.
So it's been proven that our Randance machines that were bought by Modi ji when he joined, when he came over, all of the data has gone back.
Oh, really?
It's known. And in CCTVs, today China knows all our roads and streets.
Yeah.
So, in security aspect,
Hmm.
we just need to make our own chips
Yeah.
and be self-sufficient. So we went and identified 30 odd chips that are required for different parts of the industry. And one after the other, we should start making those chips in India, give funding for that. And now the plants are coming up. So we design it and make it. And it will be totally Indian. And that will make us very secure. And also, we are not dependent on the supply chain from China.
Yeah. But also, we're at a very interesting point in the world history, right? There's so much geopolitical tension. Trump, on a random day, can just announce that, there are tariffs on India. Today, he was talking about how Apple shouldn't manufacture and do assembly in India. So, like, world leaders are actually at war. And these are real tensions across the world. So, what do you think in India's scenario today? What should we do to excel in the next 5 to 10 years so that we are not dependent on other economies?
So, I look at an example of how US did it. Post World War II, United States had a chief scientist called Vannevar Bush. Vannevar Bush actually wrote a manifesto for President Roosevelt. And in that manifesto, he said, science and technology are the key things by which America can lead. So this manifesto took a few years to get accepted, but then President Roosevelt passed it. This manifesto resulted in the birth of DARPA, birth of NSF, birth of NASA, all the institutions like that.
Wow.
And collaboration with large education research institutes like Stanford. At that stage in 1945, what did they do? They didn't have enough scientists and engineers. They passed an edict that all foreigners coming into the United States to study in Stanford, etc., their tuition will be free.
Oh, okay.
So just imagine, they created people, they created institutions, and they developed technologies as a result. So what would DARPA do? DARPA had today has a $3 billion fund budget. But how many people do they employ? 175.
Oh,
that's
okay.
it. They don't do anything on their own. They project manage. So what do? They go to the armed forces and say, what are your needs? They figure out the needs of the armed forces. They take those needs, challenge private sector, challenge startups and say, you make it for us. If you make it for us, we'll give you business. So it's a virtuous cycle.
POC based approach.
Yeah,
in that sense.
completely.
Yeah.
It's a virtuous cycle. So you design and make. If you can make it, we'll give you enough business for you to grow. So many companies like McDonnell Douglas, Boeing, all these guys got created out of DARPA. And that kind of thing is what we need for India. So about around 2 years ago, 15, 20 of us got together from the technology business area. And we said, why can't we write a 20-year plan?
Yeah.
So good news is that the Honorable Prime Minister decided to write a plan till 2047. And he gave that job to Niti Aayog and to various ministries. But that's the government part of it. Why should we leave everything to the government?
Yeah.
So why can't we as citizens do something? So we all decided that we will bring in people from industry, education, research, and government. And we did 3 offsites with them, okay, in the last 2 years. And in those offsites, we discussed our idea of a 15, 20-year plan on science and technology.
What does that look like?
So it's all in the final stages now. The government is very, very, very keen to take it forward at this stage. The good news is that the Prime Minister has already put aside a fund of 1 lakh crore
Wow.
to incent and make R&D happen in India. See, our biggest challenge is that for too long we have become a country of traders.
Yeah.
We don't do any designs and we don't make product.
Yeah, India barely spends on R&D. Korea, China spend so much in
We are
comparison.
0.2% and 0.3%.
Yeah.
Reliance spends 0.1% on R&D. So this needs to change.
Yeah.
Now, these organizations are very capable to put money behind R&D.
Yeah.
But they are looking at short term because they're guided by their investors.
Yeah. And it's all about shareholder and quarterly updates and,
So
you
the
know, where
quarterly result thing has actually destroyed this thinking a lot. So what we said was that initially, let's put some money into corporates, SMEs, and startups and give them challenges in different areas. So we identified 12, 14 technologies where we should lead the world in 15 years from now. And out of those 10, 15 technologies, maybe 3 of them, we will find one company or 2 companies which will be among top 5 in the world.
Yeah.
So we need to create a Qualcomm out of India. We need to create a NVIDIA out of India. We need to think like that. If we are going to have a lower vision, then we'll never succeed.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of thinking that we have, and the government is quite supportive, and hopefully they will take action on it.
I want to talk about that aspect a little bit more because I always wonder why don't we have a company which is, you know, comparable to the market size of a company in the US. In fact, VCs I hear in today's private markets, and I'm sure you know too, that they've all suggested companies to list in India because, you know, we can't even compete in the US markets, right? So what's the hope for India to create a globally recognized market cap company?
We need to be very clear that it has to be R&D led. It has to be technology led. Unless we own our own technologies, we will not succeed.
Yeah.
We have to invest in R&D, we have to invest in brand, and we have to invest in global market. So the good news is that a lot of software companies have already done that.
Yeah.
They've created global companies. They have offices in 70 odd countries, like HCL has many, many offices all over the world. So they are quite used to actually marketing globally and creating markets.
Yeah.
So I think now we have the knowledge and the capability to do so. But one of the main changes that are occurring due to the evolution of AI is that there are serious headwinds to services.
And we're seeing that reflecting in all the numbers from TCS and
Yeah,
others.
it is
So-
clearly showing
Yeah.
that the margins are going down, the numbers are going down, number of people employed is not happening.
Yeah.
So when you see something like that, you need to face the future. And therefore, as a country, we now need to move from being a services-led economy to be a product-led economy.
Yeah.
That is where we should go.
Yeah, because, you know, India has the digital public infrastructure, but then again, all the platform companies like Google, etc., then come and like trump with their
They use
platform.
them more than us.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, RuPay is so small,
Yeah.
but then PhonePe is using it. Our UPI is utilized by foreign companies.
Yeah.
But UPI is the best product in the world.
Yeah.
So many years ago, I used to walk into a drawing room conversation and everybody used to ask me, why you guys are in IT? Why is there no Google in India? Why is there no Microsoft in India? Today, I have an answer. There's UPI.
Yeah.
So it's the world's best product. So if we can do UPI, why can't we do anything else?
And then why do we keep losing out to platform
Yeah.
companies, right? Why don't we have those enough in
See,
India?
that is where I think a lot of attention needs to be paid to R&D. That is what will change the game. If we don't do R&D in this country, we'll remain traders.
Yeah.
Today, what happens? Guy goes to China, he picks up a product, brings it to India, puts a logo on it and sells. 5% बना लेते हैं, खुश रहते हैं, है ना? उससे कोई फायदा नहीं है.
Yeah.
The real margin is sitting at brand. What is the margin that Apple makes? It's because of its brand.
Yeah.
We need to create brands out of India.
Yeah.
That is what is the solution.
Yeah. And coming back to your HCL journey, because we spoke about, Indian founders having the ambition to go global, you took HCL global in its 4th year by moving operations to Singapore and scaling up there. What advice you have for founders who have global ambitions but might not be able to know where to start?
You see, it depends completely on the product or the service. People have taken different views. Some people have taken a view, start in India, scale, and then go
Yeah.
abroad. Some people have said, okay, understand the market, understand the product market fit. Once you've done that in India, go global faster. Both options are good. Depends on the product and the service. You look at Zoho. They didn't start in India.
Yeah.
They went straight to the US. So, it all depends on the founders. The founders take that call. If the founder of Zoho decided to live in America and start America initially, that's how it worked well.
Yeah.
And he used India as a source for creating product. And then he brought the product to India. So there are various models. That is another very interesting model. The other model is M&A. So what did HCL do? 6-7 years ago, HCL was only in services. See, originally HCL was a product business, hardware. Then it became a services company. But very clearly, in the minds of, for example, Shiv Nadar, he had this ambition that we were a product company, we must go back to product. So he saw an opportunity 6-7 years ago, and he seized upon it. And he says, we should not just remain in services, we should go back to product. So he went and bought IBM's product business. Right? $1 billion was spent on it.
Wow.
Yeah. And at that stage, the stock market reacted very negatively. What is this crazy guy spending $1 billion?
Yeah.
Today, our product business has been separated from the main company. It's called HCL Software. And I think the revenue is now 1.6 billion.
Amazing.
And it's the largest product company out of India and the 18th largest software product company in the world.
Wow.
So this is where founders have to take decisions at the right time to do the right thing. You may decide to do it organically or non-organically. That's your call. Something very interesting is happening because of the changes taking place in the world. And the major change that's taking place in the world is the aging population.
Yeah.
So if you look at Korea, Japan, Europe,
They all have declining population.
population. They've even said in 75 years, population of Korea will be zero.
Yeah. With negative birth rates, right? Yeah.
So, why is the opportunity? The opportunity is sitting there, staring at us. Lots of these companies don't have successes. We can go and buy these companies.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in some cases, just buy the technology. So, this could be a model for leapfrogging rather than starting from zero. So, we say, we don't have battery technology. Come on, go and buy a battery company in Korea. They're all aging companies.
Yeah.
So, this is where we can take advantage of that. I am very much against the idea of buying Chinese technology because I think it's a two-way sword. You will have an issue with them in terms of not actually delivering what they're promising. Because it's damn trust. It's a trust issue.
Yeah.
Do Chinese trust Indians or do Indians trust Chinese? Both sides is a problem.
They don't even trust their own entrepreneurs at the end of the day.
Look at what's happened.
Yeah.
So,
Jack Ma is nowhere to be seen or heard of at all.
it's all gone.
Yeah.
Look at what they did to ARM. ARM is a very sad story.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be very clear that going forward, we should try and work with countries like Taiwan, Japan, Korea. They're all sitting close to us. I am of the view that, especially in semiconductors, we should form an Asian alliance for supply chain. Why? It's a new idea. Government, I'm not talking to the government, it's just something that I've been thinking on. That why can't we put together an Asian alliance of Singapore, Malaysia, Japan, Korea, and India? All five of us working on the semiconductor supply chain.
Yeah.
Literally every piece exists among these countries. We have the design. Malaysia has R&D and manufacturing. Singapore has very deep R&D in semiconductors. Then Japan has equipment and Korea has great memory capabilities. If you create an Asian semiconductor alliance, I think that will be very valuable.
Yeah. The government should do more on those lines. But coming back to the dependency on China, what are some of the key risks that you foresee right now that we should be addressing? Because a lot of investors and decision makers and entrepreneurs watch this show. So, which are the key risk areas in your mind?
See, China can stop export of anything anytime. They've already stopped export of all the critical material minerals.
Yeah.
They've stopped the export of tunnel boring machines. All these things are happening. They are also not anymore. You know what they did for Foxconn? They didn't allow the equipment to move from factory there to here.
Yeah.
They didn't allow people to move from there to here. They just kept delaying the Apple project. So this is the kind of challenge we are going to face. So we should start to work on our own technologies and own design and own capabilities. And that's why I think we need to move very strongly towards doing more R&D. And the good news is that when the Honorable Minister announced, Ashwini ji announced the component program recently, he told all the guys in the audience, I will give approval for only those companies who set up design and who are Six Sigma. Very good input.
Yeah.
And he's literally telling them, guys, don't just bring technology for the heck of bringing technology. If you bring technology, develop further on it and become self-sufficient.
Yeah.
You look at Maruti. How many years Maruti has been around? 60, 70 years. Maruti today gets supplied by many companies who are still joint ventures.
Yeah.
Why? Why haven't we developed on our own? So a lot of technology has not got developed. A lot of technology is still dependent on Japan. And we are paying loads of money in terms of royalty over the years. And in any case, Maruti has now changed to Suzuki. So we've lost even the brand.
Yeah. I think Bajaj Auto did a good job over there, where they came up with their own innovation. I think Rajiv Bajaj was very good
Bajaj
on
is
that.
the right direction to go.
Yeah.
Kalyani is another great direction. They are all depending on R&D.
Yeah.
I used to go to Rajiv Bajaj and Rahul Bajaj 20 years ago and visit their R&D. They had a brilliant R&D then.
Yeah.
So
He also went to Warwick Manufacturing Group, actually. So I have spoken to him about it. But so forward looking, and they've invested. I think that's one company that's actually invested in R&D,
Yeah.
like you were saying.
Kalyani also.
Yeah.
Deep R&D.
Yeah.
So there are lots of great SMEs in Bangalore and Hyderabad who actually invested in space technology, defense technology, a lot of them.
Yeah.
All of them came into, you could see all their products in display during the war recently. So a lot of them have worked on it.
Yeah. And a lot of the times, I guess, 5 years ago, a lot of founders, at least the startup ecosystem, didn't think that the government really supported them, right? Or at least there was this negative perception that there wasn't enough government support to be backing our founders. But I think that's completely shifted now.
But one part of it has been very, very unsuccessful.
Which one?
You see, 20 years ago, when I was writing helping write the electronics policy for the country, I wrote a concept which was called preferential market access for startups and Indian companies. Never got implemented. It's a sham. It's just on paper, it doesn't work. But the way I look at it, that if UP, let's take UP. UP is the largest state in the country, biggest budget in the country.
Yeah.
Why they don't encourage Indian companies to sit and design products in UP, manufacture them in UP, and give them all the business? You know what will happen? In 2 years, you would have created a global company.
Yeah.
Because UP is bigger than many countries in Europe. And the market is huge.
Yeah, like over 300 million people live in UP. You know, but the problem always is that there's such a negative perception about UP. My father and uncle built businesses there. And, people used to tell them that if you build a business in UP, then you can build a business anywhere, because the kind of things that you have to fight daily as an entrepreneur, you will get astounded. But, yours is definitely a success story. But there are so many problems even there in terms of roadblocks and bottlenecks and corruption, unfortunately. But I guess there's lots to be done, and what you're saying is absolutely true. That
I think
we haven't harnessed the
yeah, we don't think that way.
yeah.
Yogi ji should think that, okay, I am going to buy 10 million tablets for my education system. He today, that state only buys foreign products. Why?
Yeah, why are we not buying Indian products?
So this is where I feel we are letting down startups. We should encourage startups to design and make and say, I'll give you the business. Get them going first. Then they will become global companies.
Yeah. And I also want to come back to the point where I think it was a genius marketing campaign that you guys did, which said that, even your typist can use this. And it was all about computerization and, getting people comfortable with using computers. But I think that fear still exists today in AI, because people are scared of what will happen with AI.
Yeah.
People think that, there's some bigger power that's going to come and eat us all. But how do you think founders should think about making AI more accessible to consumers? Because ultimately, if we want to win the AI game, we also have to build great AI-led consumer products, right? Which I'm not seeing too many come out of India yet.
You see, AI has been around for more than 50 years. It's not new.
Yeah.
Only in 2022, when OpenAI came up with ChatGPT, that the Pandora box got opened.
Yeah. With Gemini.
Before that, it was Siri and all those things. So we were using AI, but nothing much. With Gen AI, the opportunity is huge. And as a result, there'll be many, many good applications that will happen. And I think a lot of consumer-facing apps will also happen.
Yeah.
And that is where India's opportunity lies. We must go after the algorithms, the applications of AI. And different verticals, we should look at solutions for solving our own problems. I mean, look at even an area like chip design. If with AI, you can do it faster. Okay. If you look at drug discovery, major impetus on with AI. Instead of spending 15 years on it, maybe you can do it in 7 years. And then if you add quantum and AI, you can do it in 3 years.
Yeah.
So all these technologies are available for companies and countries to today go much faster than what we had that we were in the past.
So you think what do we need to do to be able to embrace the AI wave truly?
Look, we have a very large contingent of AI people in this country. It all depends on founders today. The opportunity side is huge.
Yeah. Well, every country is talking about winning the AI race, right?
I don't think we should worry about winning the race. I think we should worry about how to apply it for our betterment. Whether it's for social good, whether it is for running businesses, whether it is for running medical services, hospital services. Each and every area we should be using AI. And that is where it'll add value. But one major change we have to bring into all our corporates. Corporates have this tendency that AI is the job of the IT managers.
Yeah.
That ain't going to work. You must learn what is AI and how I can use it for my business.
It's absolutely the founder, promoter, and board members' call, right?
Yeah.
It has to come from the top to
Yes,
get implemented.
So, many years ago, people used to say HDFC is a bank.
Yeah.
HDFC is no longer a bank. It's a
Yeah.
technology company.
Yeah.
So,
Same for Bajaj Finance and the
Yeah,
likes,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think all of them are become technology companies, and I think more so they should become with AI. And the top management in any company must adopt AI at the top level and understand how to use AI for their business.
Yeah. And given your presence and your deep involvement in the startup world also, what are some of the things that you disagree with in the tech and startup culture? Because there's been so many issues with corporate governance and growth capital being given to companies when it's not needed, or overcapitalization of the companies. What are some of the things that you disagree with, or what do we need to change about the startup culture in India?
You see, good correction has taken place in the last 5 years. 5 years ago, VCs would keep funding. A, B, C, D. Even the fellows making a loss.
Yeah.
No unit economics. Everything was about growth. I think that model has changed. More sense has come into founders. More sense has come into VCs also. So I think what I feel is an area which VCs can get better at is to have business people inside their ICs.
Hmm.
Most VCs have finance people.
Yeah.
They don't have business people.
Who can draw beautifully on Excel, but that's not how real businesses are built.
No. So when we set up Indian Angel Network, where I'm on the board, or our fund IC is consisting of 100% business people and 2 finance people.
Okay. Yeah.
So that makes it very strong, because when we approve a project, we look at it in the right business lens
Yeah.
rather than just numbers.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the problem also was that a lot of VCs who were there hadn't actually built businesses.
That's the
So
point.
that was the DNA missing. But I think now that's changed within
I
funds as well.
hope so, because I think that is what is required.
Yeah.
And I think too much money was spent around growth.
Yeah.
And-
Especially during the 21-22 bull run.
Yeah.
It was a crazy time.
Terrible period.
Yeah.
And even today, for example, certain areas of business I don't understand. I don't understand e-commerce, and nor do I want to understand, because that's not my area of strength. My area is technology. But so much money is still going into e-commerce.
Hmm.
As per McKinsey, it'll be the largest business next 20 years. So you can't ignore e-commerce. It's going to be there.
Hmm.
But I think there are certain other areas that we need to start to focus on.
Like what?
Space is going to be a very big area.
We have a few companies which have broken the mold in that sense, but a lot needs to be done.
Yeah, no.
Really.
No. Large number of space startups are there, more than 200, 300.
Yeah.
Maybe 500. And I've invested in from our fund into couple of space startups also. They're doing very, very well.
Yeah.
And now, because of this war, they'll do much better.
Hmm. Yeah. So you've bagged over 50 companies or if more?
It must be close to 70 now.
Wow, that's amazing. So what are some of the red flags that you've seen in the companies that didn't work out?
Very poor corporate governance, no interest in finance and accounting, and no sales leadership.
Hmm.
These are 3 things that typically happen in startups. They feel that they made a great product, it's going to sell on its own. It doesn't work. You need to lead the sales effort at the CEO level and pay a lot of attention to accounting and finance.
Yeah.
Without accounting and finance, no startup can succeed.
As they say, accounting is the language of business. And as a founder, you're constantly selling. You're selling to your customers, all shareholders, investors. You have to know how to sell.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you don't know how to manage. I've had founders who, they're running the business for 2 years. Then they were presenting it to me. I said, tell me about your cash flow. They can't even describe it.
His cash flow is a foreign concept to some of them.
I always tell startups, cash flow is more important than P&L.
Hmm.
Because you don't have the money to pay your salaries, how the hell are you going to run the company?
Yeah.
Sometimes profit comes on paper. If that paper doesn't convert to cash, it's useless.
Yeah. But I think that's where investors get a little carried away by investing in, pre-product companies, pre-revenue companies, where a lot of it is also needed to fuel innovation. I don't mean to say that, it's not required, but obviously, you have to pay attention to the core business fundamentals, which is absolutely, you need to make money at some point.
Yeah, so like for example, in deep tech, you need to invest for long term.
Yeah.
So when we look at deep tech companies, we don't look at only revenue. We look at the potential of the company or the revenue. And that potential 5 years later is important, not what it is today. But then you have to bet on it. Some of those bets will succeed, some of them won't succeed. It's okay.
Yeah. And in today's day and age, when you're evaluating a company, what are the tell signs that you're looking for in a founder?
I think the quality of the founder to me is the most important aspect. If I don't like the founder, I don't invest.
How do you assess a quality?
Chatting with them, understanding with them whether they understand technology, do they understand the business, do they understand go to market, do they understand finances. I need that CEO to founder CEO to understand that. If they don't understand, then I think we have a problem. So founder is the first thing, idea is number two.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're only betting on the jockey in this case. But sometimes because IAN also invests at the earliest stages, right? So at the seed stage, some of the tell signs are not there yet.
No.
Right? They will emerge along the journey and the founder hopefully grow into.
You are seeing a pitch for about 1 hour, 2 hours.
Yeah.
From there you have to take a decision.
Yeah.
That's okay. I mean, those are things that happen in angel investing is all about putting money in multiple companies, and then out of 10, 2 will succeed, and you get your returns.
Yeah. And we were talking about, this trend of family offices betting on startups very heavily in sectors they might not understand very well. What do you think in today's day and age capital allocators should do better in terms of understanding where to invest?
I think family offices directly investing into startups is a very difficult task because they do not understand startups. They understand money. They don't understand startups. So the best model for them to employ is to go and invest, put their money into a venture fund, who will then and be an LP there, and also do something more than being an LP. Get involved with some of the interesting deals that the VC is doing.
Yeah.
And say that, okay, let us say you are investing 15, 20 crores onto a particular deal. And if I, from the family office, like that deal, I will put another 5 crores.
That's how a lot of family offices co-invest alongside the fund. Yeah.
They should co-invest rather than direct invest. Because direct invest, very few of them will have the capability.
Yeah.
Unless you set up a large office.
Yeah. And because it all is about access to the best founders, right? And getting the right deal flow. And like we were just discussing that, a lot of family offices unfortunately get stale deals,
Very old. Yeah, very stale.
Yeah.
Others have rejected it.
Yeah. And that's been true because there's a lot of herd mentality also, unfortunately. So people just follow on and...
Yeah. कहीं lunch पे मिल लिए, अरे यार मैं इसमें डाल रहा हूँ पैसे तू भी डाल दे.
Yeah.
वही चलता है.
Yeah.
It's not good enough.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The due diligence process itself is a painful process.
Yeah.
It's not something you can ignore.
Yeah. In the book Just Aspire, you wrote that India should stop playing small with its talent. So what's your hope for India and its talent now?
You see, we are underballing ourselves in a lot of ways. We play second fiddle to the West in many areas. And that is because of our history. We've always looked up on the West. That looking up funda has to go away. Reason for it is that today, India is no longer a situation where people don't know our capability. The world knows our capability.
It's the Indians who are leading all the big tech companies.
So why do we still take this back seat in things? We should aggressively be at the end, at the front end of things. And that m- mindset we need to change. It's a mindset issue. And we need to now learn to lead rather than follow. Okay. I mean, I'll give you a cricket analogy. A lot of kids I talk to and I say, do you like batting or bowling? 99% say batting.
Hmm.
And I ask them, and one guy says bowling. Then I ask him, why do you like bowling? He says, no, I like to bowl. No logic. There should be a logic behind everything you do. Yeah. So
Yeah.
why I believe bowling is the right thing to do. Reason is that you set the field. You're no longer reactive, you're proactive. You are leading. That's what I mean by leading.
Right.
And that is what we should be doing. So if Pakistan attacks us, be a bowler, set the field. The fellows will have to keep responding, which is what they did in this war. They were not proactive, they were reactive.
Yeah.
As a country, we need to be proactive. As people, we need to be proactive. As people, we should be leaders in everything we do. And that mindset change is required.
Yeah. And you've seen 5 decades of tech almost. What are some old school principles that you think still apply today and are timeless across your business and investing journey?
Relationships, very strong.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, a relationship is what creates a company. In my book, I could talk about it as people tree. If you read that chapter, you will find what do I mean by that? HCL initially was a hardware company. And the business that I led, which was close to 12,000 crores, was a low margin business. And we took the R&D out of this company and created HCL Technologies, which became a software global company. But this company was a low margin company. So when you are a low margin company, you can't afford to pay salaries like 2 crores and 3 crores.
Yeah.
So what do? You hire people with one basic capability, which is achievement orientation. And if you hire people with that achievement orientation, then you will have people working for you who are always wanting to achieve. Number one. Number two, you need to create deep relationships with your people within each unit of your company. So what we did was that instead of having one monolith company, we had close to 12 different P&L that we were running. Each of them was a SBU. And each of them was a person designated as sort of a CEO. And he or she would manage the profit and loss. And therefore, each unit became smaller, easier to manage. So instead of having 10,000 people reporting to you, you have 500 or 700 people. Then you know people by name. This relationship management is what made us successful. Because even at the middle level of salary that we were paying, nobody wanted to leave HCL. And for 7 years, we were the best employer in the country.
Wow.
Not with the best salary,
Yeah.
but because we had very strong relationships that we had. And we normally did not go and hire the top students from IITs. We would go and pick up people from second tier institutions. They have more hunger and they have the staying power.
Yeah.
So they stood with us. And I'll give you an exact example of what this means in relationship. I had close to about 2,000, 3,000 employees in Noida, where our headquarters was. Every new year, I would go and meet janitor to general manager, shake their hands and say Happy New Year.
Wow.
End of 2 days, my arm used to ache. But what it did to them was phenomenal.
Yeah.
They associated with me.
It makes all the difference.
Yes. So, the guard who used to be at the entrance of my building still is in touch with me.
Wow.
You will send me messages, साहब आप कैसे हैं? I have not been there for 12 years. I got a message from him, and he sent me a message last month saying that my son is coming from America. He's now working in HCL Technologies. He wants to meet you. Just imagine.
That's incredible impact, and that speaks volumes about who you were as a leader and still continue to be. But we've spoken so much about the bullish side of the story. Let's also talk about some of the risks that can derail us from the India opportunity at large.
You see, a lot of startups and also organizations like HCL do phenomenal amount of business with the government. And government is a very poor paymaster.
Yeah.
So lots and lots of startups get into this trouble of cash flow.
Yeah. In fact, as an investor, we often discount the government related cash flow, right? Because you don't know if it'll come or not in the
No, that is not the reason.
Yeah.
Money will 100% come. Government money never stays away.
with delays.
But instead of 6 months, you may get it in 18 months.
Yeah.
Your cash flow gets just.
And it's all about survival in the startups. Yeah.
So that is where, uh, I always have to tell people that watch out for receivables. You don't watch out for receivables and understand how to get money from the government, you won't get the money. Why most people have trouble collecting from the government? Because they don't follow the government process. They need to understand इतने इतने पेजेस ऑफ पेपर चाहिए, ये 20 शीट्स चाहिए, साइन चाहिए, पूरी कंट्री से चाहिए, ये लोग समझते हैं. So what they do is they try and do a shortcut, उसमें फंस जाते हैं. So this is an area that concerns a lot of startups and companies. But I think the government is a very large buyer anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And as I said, government can create or break businesses. So I think government business is important and it needs to be done, but you need to understand how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for taking out the time to be with me here today. And it was a fantastic conversation. I think so many of our viewers today will learn a lot about how to look at the AI roadmap for India and also the new mission that you're a part of. So thank you for sharing this timeless wisdom with us.
Pleasure talking to you.